Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. My name is Cyril. I'm a Front End CTO at SFEIR, a French Parisian society. And I'm also a Google developer expert on web technologies like Angular, Polymer, and progressive web app. So don't hesitate at the end of the talk. If you have any question, just come to me. I will be happy to answer.
Hi, everybody. I'm Florian Orpelière. I'm a software engineer at SFEIR too, in Paris. And I'm very happy to be here with you to talk about progressive web app. So let's go.
OK. So the first time we heard about progressive web apps, it was about 1 year ago when our boss came back from Google I/O and he said, guys, there is a new thing coming here. It's called progressive web apps. And he said, you should have a look on it. And because he's the boss, we heard we must have a look on it. So we were really volunteer to try focus on this topic. And the first, we never heard about it, so we tried to use Google the first time to see what is it about. So we were really happy the first time to see that we are talking about the mobile ecosystem. So before going deeper in the details, let's focus on what is the situation of the mobile today. When you want to display content to a user on a mobile, you have three solutions. The first one, you can make a native application, and this application will be targeted to the platform you want, or the platform of your user. For example, for the Android user, you're going to write an application using Java language. And for iOS user, you're going to write the same application, but using Swift or Objective-C. The other solution you have today to display content is to use to make a web application. So every mobile today has a real modern browser. So you can display content in this browser using HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And the last solution is a little trick between the two first one. It's say you want to make a native application, but you don't want to write it several times, so you are going to use the web technologies to package the application on the native format.
But a user uses this phone. This figure demonstrates that a user navigates to a site, 100 sites per month in average, and use only 25 apps per month. But however, a user spends more time to an app rather than in mobile, in site. So we can conclude by this graph, an app have more capabilities because it can re-engage a user with push notification, sensor, Bluetooth, or other things, and a site reach more people. The idea behind progressive web app is to merge these two worlds in once with more capability and reach people. The first time the progressive web app appear is in an article written by Alex Russell, a software engineer at Google, and he explained what is a progressive web app. Firstly, a progressive web app is a web app. Okay, like you can make today with Angular or React or JavaScript vanilla or other things. It's a responsive app for fits to all screens with Bootstrap, for example, or many other things. It's a safe application. Okay, we must provide a secure application with HTTPS. And it's efficient. It's a very important point because we want to be like a native app, so we must be very performant. It will progressive. Is another very important point because for all users, regardless of the browsers, the apps must run perfectly. It's app-like, okay. It's very. It has the same behavior like a native app. And we have some features like an app. We have connective dependent. Even if you are offline, your app continue to run. It's installable to keep it on your phone, and it's re-engageable. You can with push notification, user come back to your app. Another thing, your app is linkable. We can share your app just when you share a URL. It's the power of the web. It's discoverable. You can perhaps search in a search engine. Excuse me, in search engine your app, and it's always up to date.
So the first thing we saw is that this application must be secure. So you're going to have to use HTTPS to make a progressive web app. Just to focus, okay, I need HTTPS, but when I'm working on my laptop, I don't necessarily have a certificate. So how can I implement this application, this progressive web app? The good news, the first good news is that when you're working on localhost, your browser considering that you are on HTTPS, so you can work on your laptop without certificate. So, but after I want to deploy my application and I want to make some tests to see if it's working like I expect. So, without having a certificate, you can use some platform like GitHub with GH Pages or Heroku, sorry, where you can deploy your application on those platforms, and they are natively expose your application on HTTPS. So this is the first try that will be easy to make. And the last one, if, okay, I want to deploy the application on my own server, but I don't want to spend a lot of money with certificates. So you have now a nice solution called Let's Encrypt, where you can provide free certificate that will be available for 6 months. So with this, you can try and test your application in real condition.
Talk about performance. For performance, we have Rails. Rails is a user-centric metrics for your apps with its life cycle. So when a user input, you have a response. You must respond in 100 milliseconds before a user notices a lag. Your animation must be in 60 FPS. It's very important. You must maximize idle time for different work, like preload data for other things or for other routes. And your app must be loaded under 1 second. It's very important too. But it's important to know how browser work and how it do when in a frame. When you are in 60 FPS, a frame is in 16 milliseconds. So in 60 milliseconds, your browser executes JavaScript, recalculate style, and the render engine do 3-step layout for create layer. Excuse me. Paint it paints on each layer, and composite merge into ones. It's important to know that layout and paint are very expensive operations. So if we can remove it, it's better. And for that, CSS properties doesn't function at the same thing. For example, if we want to just create a translate box, we can use left, top, left, for example. But left use layout, paint, and composite. For the same thing, for just translate, we can use a transform. A transform use just composite. So, demo time to demonstrate that. Okay. So, this is a very, very difficult animation. I move my Grumpy Cat, and the animation is like this. I can zoom up. Okay. So I have a counter, very simple, and I set myself left style, and I set a timer to create my animation. Okay. If I use timeline tab in Chrome, and I reload, I'm recording. 1 second, okay. Okay. I can view what what browser do. So I execute JavaScript, timer fired. I recalculate style. I have a layout, paint, and composite. Okay. So and we can view paint with paint flashing. here. So I have paint. Okay, I remove my left and I use transform. Okay, just that. Remove paint flashing. And I reload. Okay, quick. And I zoom it. No, no save. Thank you. Okay. Layout disappear. I just JavaScript, recalculate style, paint and composite, layout disappear. I can do better because, like you can see at the top, frame rate is 58 because it's a very simple animation, but we can do better. Our JavaScript engine and our render engine is desynchronized. For that, we can use recursive animation frame. It's very better because it's a render engine key is execute the animation. So when it is ready. So let's go. Okay, and normally, okay, it's very flat. And when I come with my colleague here this morning, I try a new thing and I want to share with you because it's very funny. Okay, I do paint flashing and we can view we have a paint. And if we use a rotate with 0 degree, so no rotate, and I execute it. Okay. Rotate, excuse me, rotate X. Okay. If I zoom it, so paint flashing doesn't appear, but and I don't have paint step because rotate creates a new layer, and when you must translate, when you do a translate, it just move a layer from another and just composite is execute. Okay, it's very simple example. So if you want to know more about CSS properties, you can go to css-triggers.com and view what do CSS properties for every render engine. But we can do more better. We have more other things to improve performance. We can do compression with gzip. We can do async defer scripts. We can use HTTP2, load CSS. Because we can, with load CSS, we can load asynchronously CSS, use browser cache on many other things today.
Yeah. So we are not going to start going deeper in the real progressive web app. Though it's really important, so we put it again on the slide. You have to realize that making a progressive web app is really first making a web application, and then you're going to add some feature on this application to make it more like a native application. So for most of the user, if the user can use those new features, he will have a rich user experience. But you don't have to. For the other user, I mean, the application must work perfectly. So this is the main concept of the progressive web app. So, telling this, we are going to see what is the most important part we are going to use to make that kind of progressive approach. It's called a service worker. So the service worker gives you the ability to add some feature to a web application. So how it works? The service worker is, if it's implemented, it's some things running on the browser side, and all the requests from your application are going to pass through him. The idea, is that because it's like a web worker, the service worker won't have access to the DOM. So the goal of a service worker is not to manipulate the page or to change anything in your application. The service worker just have access to the request, and he have access to a cache API and to fetch APIs. So you can decide in your service worker, okay, this request is coming in. Do I use a cache or do I call the network? But you can do whatever you want. As you can see, the service worker is now okay to use in Chrome, Firefox, and Opera. We have strong signals from Microsoft team that it will land in Edge really soonly. But for Safari, no signals at all at this moment. So it won't work for now in Safari. I think we have a little demonstration here.
Okay. So demonstration here and here. Okay. We have a little application. It's just for search some people when in the database. And we have a new tab in Chrome. It's called Application for all of the features in an application. So go to the code. For create a new service worker, you do register it. So I have a first script. In it the service worker.js. So I go in. Okay. Here I'm okay. Here I'm progressive because if my navigator has this feature, service worker, I can use it. So I use it. I register a new service worker, service worker.js. It's a promise. When it's promise success, I console log. Okay. Here I'm in service worker. I console log. Whoops. Okay. I devox. Click. Go to console. Okay. Okay. I devox. My service worker explained that it is very happy to be here. So the example is to keep data in a cache. Like you can see in network, my application is very wide. It has 1.6 megabytes, and we can do very better. We cache all of this data in a cache API. So for use a service worker, it's self. It's not this because I don't know. It's not this.
Because it's JavaScript. We have to change the name every time.
It's event driven, so I listen a new event. Okay. For okay, I listen fetch event. It's when HTTP request is due. Okay, I have a function. Okay. In my function, I have an event. Okay. So I respond with a new response. Okay. Respond with. Okay. So I go to the cache and I search. I try to find a response for a particular request. So I use match. I chase a request, and I can have a response. Oh. If I have a response, I return them. Oops. I don't. Okay. But if my response is undefined, I fetch myself the request. Okay. It's a promise. I have a response fetch. Okay. Oops. And I want to put this response in a cache. So I open a cache. I call it dynamic cache. Okay. It's a promise. So when it's open, I have the cache. Okay. It's a promise. when my cache is open, I want to put my response on it. So cache.put. The key is the request, and the value is the response. Okay, and I return my response. But a response cannot be consumed twice. So I do clone it before. Okay.
So what's going to happen here is that the first time the user is going to reach our page, we are going to look in the cache, but we are going to find nothing. So all the requests will be made on the network, but all the response will be put in the cache. And the second time the user will come on our page, all the content will be available in the cache.
Okay, so go to the application. I reload. I remove. Skip waiting. Clear. And restart. It's better. Okay. Oh, I have an error. Okay, I never listener. Excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, it will be okay. No. Okay. Here you have 2.7 kilobyte transferred. Okay. So my service worker work, and you can go to the cache storage, and we can see all of data are in the cache, and the service worker responds for me. So even if I'm in offline mode, I don't use network, my application continues to work.
Okay. So we are going to continue on that problem of network. We make a quick demonstration of what we can make with the service worker, but the main idea here is to say that you have the hand on your code and you can decide what you want to do. When you're talking about network, I think there is three kind of situation, and the service worker can help you in all these situations. I don't talk about the first one, which is I'm online, I'm on a 4G network, and everything is going very fast. But there is another situation, which is the offline status. I mean, what can the service worker do to help you during that kind of situation? There is a lot of strategy. You can decide, for example, to cache a lot of content like we made with Florian and to retrieve this content when the user is offline, or you can decide to give access to some of the functionality of your application, but not all. But the most important point is that you have the hand on it. There is also another situation where we can work on is what we call the Li-Fi. I mean, you think you are connected to the network, even sometimes you think you have a strong connection, but the data doesn't come very fast. So even in that situation, we can make some things. We have some strategy to improve the user experience. For example, you can decide for when a user tries to have some content in his application, you can say, okay, I will give you first the content from my cache, and when the network will respond, I will give you some fresh data. So everything is always to make a better user experience. And telling that, we saw a lot of patterns starting to come on the internet, telling you what kind of strategy you can use according to what kind of data you want to show to the user. For example, we have a first strategy that we call offline first. You are going to use this strategy when you want, for the static assets, for example, like image, things that doesn't change really often. For those assets, the idea is to say, okay, my page needs those assets, so the service worker is first going to check in the cache if he has it, and if not, it's going to ask to the network. There is another pattern that you can put in your progressive web app. It's what we call, for example, API cache. This strategy will be used for data. So the idea is to say, okay, We want the user to have the information the more faster as possible, but we have to call the network to have fresh data. So the service worker will make requests to the network, but put every time the data in the cache for example, an offline access. And then we are going to see what kind of feature our application can take to be more like a native application. We talk a lot of performance. Florian make a demonstration using CSS properties, but it's really an important point because users don't like to wait. I mean, I don't like to wait, and I'm sure you don't like to wait. And this is especially true with native application. We can't spend maybe 1 second, 2 seconds when we are waiting for a web application because we are more used to wait when we are using the internet. But when we have a native application, we are used to we are prepared to use this application immediately. So we have to make the things come faster when we try to make progressive web app. We should always try to make our application go faster, but the idea is that with progressive web app, we have to make better again. So there is a new pattern coming with progressive web app, is what we call application shell. The idea is to, again with the service worker, put in the cache the minimum of HTML assets and CSS assets so that we can display to the user something really quickly, even instantly if we can. So we are going to put in the cache the HTML and the CSS that we use to make this app shell. And after, we are going, for example, to use JavaScript or anything else to put dynamically the content in this application. So for the user, it would be a really more nice user experience because you don't have to wait in front of a white page. You will have the app shell that comes instantly and the content that will be loaded after.
Installable. Okay, when you have created your progressive web app and when you respect condition, you have a little pop-up here ask you to add to home screen your application for keep it in your phone. So for obtain this pop-up, you must have a manifest file. We can see it just after. Have a service worker, serve your site over HTTPS, and visit the site at least twice with at least 5 minutes between visits. The manifest file is very simple. It's just a JSON file that describes your application and its behavior. So when I add to the screen the application, a little icon appears to my phone, and it's composed by 2 components, short names and icons. When I click on it, I have a splash screen to wait page to load. So this splash screen is described by 4 components, short names, icons, background color, and theme color. And after, my application is launched, and the first screen appears. This drives by start URL and display. Display standalone hide the browser, the URL bar of browser. So when you have created your manifest file, you just link to your HTML, and you can view it on Chrome with application tab, like that here. And you can view what icon you have put on it, and other properties.
Okay. One of the most interesting features that you will be able to bring into your web application is the ability to re-engage your user. There is a lot of studies that say that people use your application and after never come back in it. So the idea is to say, okay, you have now a way to say, hey, come back, I have something to show to you. This is maybe, I think the notification is until now reserved in the native world. So when people decide to make a native a mobile application, if he want to make notification, he have no choice, he have to make it in native. Now we can make it in the web application. So how it looks like. The idea is that you will have a subscription channel that, because you have to ask the user if he allow you to send him notification, and you will have some notification that will appear on your phone like this, and the main idea is it's a native notification. It's not some kind of pop-in in your web application or thing like that. It's really a real native notification. And even if your application is not running in the background, the notification will be able to pop into the user. How are we going to make that kind of notification? The first thing is that we have a channel where we're gonna ask to the user if he's agree for us to send him notification. So you're gonna have some steps like this in your using again some new API. We are going to use the push API, and you're going to say, okay, do you subscribe to the notification? And a pop-in will be displayed to the user, and if you say yes, you can have access now to what we call an endpoint detail. It's a kind of ID that the browser gives it to you that you can use after to target this user. So what you have to do is to send this ID to your server for later send notification. Okay, so how do we send a notification to the user? There is no direct communication between your server and the user. You have to use what we call a endpoint server. So when you want to send a notification, you have to generate a message, send it to the endpoint, and the endpoint with the ID that you saved during the subscription is able to send notification to this particular user. And then the browser receives this notification. And the last step is, okay, there is a notification that arrives on the mobile of my user. How can I display it to the user? So the notification arrives, and here again, it's the service worker that is going to handle that notification to show the message to the user. So we show you that service worker is working with event. So we have a new event called push that will be raised when a notification is coming on the mobile. You just have to listen to this notification and then say, okay, I'm using that new method called show notification to display something to the user. And you see that you can, you have some information that you can provide to the method, like title, icon, and some useful information. But this is not a real useful because there is no context. I mean, I just have the information from my server that I should notify the user, but I don't know what to tell him. So the idea is, for now, you cannot add context to the notification, but there is a trick. You can register to this event and say, okay, I know that I have something to display to my user. I'm going to ask my server. So I have access to the fetch API, so I can ask my own server, what do I have to say to my user? The server can give you the information, and then in the response of your server, you can make a show notification with real context. Okay. We show you some real theoretic concept, but we want to show you that there is some real, a real case where the progressive web app are used in production. And you can see that we try to show you some different kind of example in the real life. The first one, it was this summer in Google I/O. They decide to make their web application progressive. That means that for the user who went to the event, and if they have all the characteristics we show you, they were able to use, for example, this application offline. They were able to install this application on the home screen, and they have a lot of features of the progressive web app. Even if you say, for example, that during this event you want to listen to a specific talk, you got notification before the talk starts to say, hey, the talk is going to start. So it was really interesting, though. So there is a lot of metrics here, but I think the most interesting is the 88% of visitors support service worker. This is a good metric that says that the service workers start to be present on the mobile attendees. So, okay, it's a Google conference, so you can imagine that I think most of the users have Android phone or things like that, but it's an interesting point. Maybe you know this one, DevVox, a little conference in Belgium. You can use the Horacio Gonzalez, which is another GDO, just make this application for DevVox. So it's a progressive web app also. So if you go on the application, on the website, I mean, the first time you will see nothing, but if you come back 5 minutes later, you will see this little pop-in that asks you if you want to install the application for the Android user only. And you will see that you can use, go into the session, go see the speaker information, the talk description, even if you are offline. Another interesting case, it's what we call Flipkart, which is a B2C e-commerce site. And they decide to play more on the offline, with the offline feature. So you can navigate into their website and see, for example, categories, products, add something to your cart. And what is interesting that if you suddenly become offline, the application will show you, because you can see that the main color of the application is blue and it's become gray to say, okay, the application is working, but you are offline. And you can continue to play with it. So they decide to provide some content to the user, even if they are offline. So you cannot do everything. You cannot go into sections that you haven't been before, but all the things you have already saw, you can continue to travel inside. You can add things to your card, and when you get the network again, you can validate your card, for example. So I think this is a real case that we are going to see more and more in the B2C side. Another example that is really more funny than really useful, it's what The Guardian, which is a newspaper, they make a little experiment for the offline support. They decide not to provide articles or any content when the user is offline, but a game. So they make a crossword so that if you lose the network, instead of having the Tyrannosaurus, you can play and wait for the network to come back. We have plenty of time. I think we go really fast. So, sorry, this is our conclusion. If you have to remember only three things for progressive web app, the first thing is the progressive aspect. I mean, if you remember what Florian showed you, we didn't touch our web application. We have a web application that is working. The only thing we've done is to say, if you have service worker, register our service worker, and all the progressive feature is coming with the service worker. Performance is really, really something you have to watch on, because user is going to install your application, and if the user wants your application to work like a native application, you have to make a real effort on the performance. And the last thing is that all those features are now available for you. You don't have to take all the features. Maybe you can. I have, for example, some customers that are only interested in the notification process. They don't want to make offline status or things like that. You can choose, when you have targeting people with service worker, you can choose what feature you want to bring to the user. We had you a lot of links here. If you want to go deeper in the details for the progressive web app, there is a lot of technical article, how to use the service worker. So this is the most interesting link. We have spent time on it. Also, we put you some specification so that you can see that it is not something coming from only Google, for example. It's a real specification that are going to be implemented in all the navigator. And the last thing is that we show you some code, so you can see that we have to write a lot of code to make those features work in your mobile. But there is now some useful tools that you can bring into your project for not having to write this code. For example, you have the SW cache and SW push library that you can put in your project, and with a few steps of configuration, you will have the same effect that what Florian wrote in maybe 10 lines of code. Oh, thank you for watching. And maybe because we have some time, if you have some question, don't hesitate.